to Cup of Awesomism podcast. I am Lynne, aka Awesomism Mom. I am your host today, and thank you, Zelina Hall, for that awesome music at the introduction. For those of you who don't know, Zelina is a country recording artist who is autistic. So I love having her music as my opening on my show. Okay, so today I have an awesome guest. His name is Loren Smith. And Loren and I connect through another group that we are in together. And I was asking for some awesome guests, and he volunteered. So I'm super excited to have him on today. I'll let him introduce himself and tell you all about himself. So go ahead, Loren, take it away.
Well, thanks so much, Lynn. It's great to be here with you. As Lynn mentioned, my name is Loren Smith, and I run a research group called the Skyline Policy Risk Group, where we track all issues related to transportation. I've been working in transportation for a little over 12 years, and it is such an important part of of society, of folks getting around, of the economy, and how people live. And I was really excited to come talk to Liz because, sorry.
Okay, Lynn.
I was really excited to come talk to Lynn about autism and about making sure that folks have the accessibility and mobility that they need. It's one of the things that we spent a lot of time talking about. When I was at the Department of Transportation, I used to work at the U.S. Department of Transportation for about 4 years. And the priorities there as the major regulator and funder of U.S. transportation infrastructure is safety. Safety is our top priority, making sure you get from point A to point B in one piece. That's core to the concept of transportation, working on rebuilding America's infrastructure and preparing for the future of transportation. And one of the things that we were looking at over the past few years was that core mobility, making sure that innovation, making sure that people could get where they need to go, infrastructure, safe transportation, that we needed to do a better job of focusing on accessibility and making sure that that people who have disabilities, different types of disabilities, that transportation is open to everyone, that everyone has accessible forms of transportation. And we're living through a really exciting time right now because of all the new technologies that are becoming available that can help people get around, either whether you're talking about technologies that make it easier to drive, or technologies that are more autonomous and will take people around through, whether it's on a bus or through some sort of ride sharing. But there's a lot of opportunities out there. But we wanted to make it an intentional focus on accessibility, to make sure that our system was open to people, of differing abilities and things. We hosted an accessibility summit in 2019, where we got together. We had over 500 people in all together. This is before COVID. We're all getting together, and we had a day-long conference on different things that we could do to make sure that people are able to get around. If someone is going to go visit their grandmother, or someone is going to travel, or just be able to commute for a job, these are things that we need to make sure, to the maximum extent that we're able, that we can help people get from point A to point B. And so a lot of the focus was on technology and on the new new automated types of systems that can help people. I mean, people that are elderly, people that are blind, or people that just need some additional assistance in getting from place to place. And so we work with several of the other agencies in the federal government, the Labor Department, HHS, a lot of the other agencies that think about how we can help people that may be atypical in different ways. We had several activists that were focusing specifically on autism, and how can we make sure that these technologies are going to be helping them. And that was something that was a really, really neat project to work on. We did it again in last July of 2020, when we were marking the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so we had another conference where we were looking through each of the agencies within the Department of Transportation for railroads, for airplanes, for vehicle safety, and all of these agencies looking at the things that they're doing to make transportation more accessible for everybody. So that's been a really neat thing to work on and be a part of the past few years. And I think it's we need to make sure that it continues to be a policy priority for not just government, but just sort of for the culture, for society, for people to be welcoming of folks from different backgrounds and differing abilities.
Oh, I agree. And I think it's an extremely important issue that many times we don't talk about, because you brought up a really good point. We have to make sure that there's going to be accessibility for, especially for me, I'll just speak on the autism cause. I look at someone like my son, so many autistic adults do not drive. Okay. So if they need to get a job and if they need to get to a place, we need to make sure that whether it's through a bus, through a train, through whatever, or like the new cars that will be coming out with the self-driving, we need to make sure that they are thought about, that they are have a seat at the table, that they're in the discussion of how do we get them to work, how do we get them to school. If they're going for, let's just even say, social skills class as a 25-year-old, so that they can learn to go to work, or work skill classes. These are so often the times that autism, I feel, is left out of the discussion. Let me give you a quick example. About 4.5 years ago, my husband and I, in 2016, in November of 2016, flew out to Palo Alto, California. And we were getting ready to come back, and we got to the airport, and I said, we were at San Francisco airport, and I said to the people, that were doing the security checks, I said, my son is autistic. He does not really want to be touched. Well, one of them gave me a really hard time about it. And then a woman stepped in and said, come with me, because she heard me, And so they took him to the side and they talked to him and they did the stuff on him and said, okay, you can go through. And they if she had not stepped in, I don't know what would have happened. We probably wouldn't have made our plane. Okay. So he got to go through, and we were talking to him. So we get to the counter, and he was a little frazzled by it, because first he was kind of panicked that they were, because he could feel the anger. And I was trying to keep him not have a meltdown. And Peyton is fully verbal. I mean, he's, high functioning and stuff. So it's not like he didn't understand what was going on. And in some ways that made him more stressed. So we get up to the counter and they said, I'm sorry, but you and your husband and your child cannot sit together. The three of you need to sit separate on the plane. I said, my son cannot sit separate. He has to sit with either my husband or myself. And, he's 21 now. So he was, 16 at the time. So she's looking at me behind the counter, and I said, he's autistic. She looked at me like I could have said, iggly boogly boogly. She just didn't know what I was saying and didn't care. And she said, you can't sit together. I said, he needs to sit with one of us. And she just sat there looking at me like I was the problem here. And I knew he gets very stressed getting on the airplane. Okay, he's 16, I get it, but he's autistic. And I was really upset. And so long story short, someone heard me and said, we'll switch our seats. You can sit in our two, we'll sit separate. And she acted like the woman behind the counter for this particular airline, and I won't mention their name except for it starts with an A, acted like she was doing me a huge favor by changing these things. And I gotta tell you, I was quite upset by it, because I thought, autism, it's not like my child is 1 in 200 billion kids. This is, there's 7 million autistic adults, folks. We need to grow up and realize these things happen. They are going to be stressed about sitting away from their parent. I'm sure they've run into this. So anyway, we get on the flight, and he has sensory issues, and his ears were really bad. The stewardess completely ignored me the entire time. And I kept saying, I need water for him. She just kept walking past me. I was so frustrated by the time we landed. So I reached out to this particular airline, and their exact response to me was, we're really sorry you didn't have a very good flight. No, I'm so sorry. Can you tell us more about your situation? What happened, so that we make sure that we train better? We try to train our employees. Obviously we need to train better, which is some of the things that I've had with other situations with him. And it just upset me. And I thought, in that incident, kind of got me into the mindset of the Department of Transportation. I hate to be this way, but needs to be a little bit more aware of what, we go through as autism families. Because you know what? If my child were blind, she would have immediately recognized it. But you look at my child, he looks exactly like his oldest brother. You don't realize he has a disability, that he's special needs. And I think we need, and that's why when you said you wanted to come on, I was like, I love this topic, because I think, like you said, cars, buses, railroads, airports, infrastructure, everything to do with transportation. I want to see, and I hope my podcast talking to you resonates with other people, that they need to have a seat at the table. And that's why I even love what you do now with your business, because I would love to see some of these, since you have a heart for this, and you have 8 children, I might add to everyone listening, the next time you get stressed with the child in your home, remember he is starting his own business with 8 children. Okay, so this guy's super dad here, Superman. Okay, I would love to see some of these big corporations that are in the transportation industry reach out to you and say, hey, we want to talk to you. We want you to have a seat at the table to talk to us. How can we make life better for you? Some of these airlines and bus systems and everything else. How can you help us make things better for the disabilities community? That's why I wanted you on here.
Thanks, Lynn. There's a lot to break down in what you went through. It's obviously must have been very frustrating at multiple, because you had like multiple chapters of what you went through. I guess at least at some level, I find it very heartening. First of all, that you got through it, right? That it didn't end up being ultimately a roadblock, and that it was people who, when the people became engaged, like the TSA agent who overheard what was going on, came over and helped correct the situation. And then when you were actually boarding the plane, there was other passengers who were like, oh yeah, no, actually we'll trade, no problem there. Then the airline itself said, well, maybe we could change our procedures, change the training a little bit. That there's sort of a cultural and social awareness, that when people know that there's an issue, like, oh, you know what, we can solve this. And I think that's very encouraging in that way. The fact that you had to go through that again at multiple points is obviously not good, but I think that there's a lot to build on. The fact that there is that cultural and social awareness shows that we've got a consensus that we can help people, and that we can pull together to make sure that there's space for everybody. But we do need to think about, from a policymaker standpoint, how can we make sure that we've got procedures in place that have that same level of openness and awareness and working together. I think that that's something that goes for, we could apply this to many types of issues, but I think to help people with autism, parents of autistic children, how can we make sure that there's sort of a general not just awareness, but a sense of processes that people that are frontline service people that have very hard jobs themselves, very hard jobs, because they're dealing with people that are stressed, people that are frustrated, especially in the just in the airline industry alone, people with flights change, snowstorms come in. I mean, the situation in Texas right now where people are out of power. I mean, so those frontline service workers, they've got real tough jobs, but they need to be getting they need the support, they need the training, the procedures, the policies. I mean, we need to make sure that they have the info that they need. Like, right. Hey, there's group of people out there. It's a fairly substantial portion of the public that deals with autism, and that these are the ways that we're going to help these people, and we can make that. I think we can do a lot, to make it easier, Lynn, especially when you're traveling, and traveling can be, in a family situation, and that can be tough, in the best of circumstances, even when everything's going swimmingly. But when you have problems, not being able to get, the right accommodations, I mean, my hat's off to you for, keeping it cool and managing through that situation. I always say with my kids, you mentioned I've got a lot of kids, it's chaos, but it's wonderful. So
Right.
it's a lot of
Well,
fun.
I think too, so often autism families feel like they don't want to travel because of all of these roadblocks that can come in. And one of the goals of my Awesomism Mom and my podcast is to help find solutions for issues that we can help fix. Now, I am under no delusion that I'm going to be able to totally fix the transportation industry, because like you said, first of all, it's stressful. I can't even imagine working at an airport because, one little glitch and everybody's crazy. I mean, I've been at the airport where I've seen people working and, they have 50 people in their face screaming at them. I have to be on my flight. I have to get, I mean, I get that. But for every little awareness that we can get out there, and every person who may listen or decide to try to work towards solutions, I think really helps. That's why I always say, I try to push not just the awareness, but the acceptance and the activism. My biggest thing is the activism, because you know what? If just one small, let's just say a small airline listens to this podcast, somebody from the airline, and says, hey, let's reach out to Loren and have him come in and talk to us, that may be just the difference between a family saying, I'm going to take a vacation this year because I know that that part of our vacation is going to be less stressful. Because, we need vacations. We live under a lot of stress as autism families. And if we cut out vacations, I can't tell you how many autism families say to me, we don't go on vacation. We just don't go on vacation because of the stress level. And if we can find little solutions here and there, and sometimes all it takes is knowing that you have a place at the table, that your voice is being heard. I mean, that with 8 kids. I mean, I only have 4 kids. By, American standards, that's a large family, 4 kids. And I know my kids sometimes
We all have our own paths to walk.
yeah. And I know my kids would say to me sometimes, especially my 3rd child, who's my quietest of my kids, would always say, the fact that you're listening to me means a lot, because, they would fight to get their voice out there. And that's kind of how I feel with autism. If people will listen, we've got half the battle won. And that's why, like I said, not to just keep saying the same thing, but when you said you wanted to come on here, I thought, here's somebody who is a problem person who takes problems and finds solutions. You're a problem solver, and you're in an industry that I don't think a lot of the autism community tries to go to necessarily, because it seems so overwhelming. And I thought this is a perfect way for us to be able to start the discussion on this podcast. And who knows where this could go. And that's why I wanted you on here.
Well, thanks, Lynn. Yeah, we definitely have a lot of challenges to tackle, but I think the willingness, I've seen, I've seen a good amount of willingness to confront these challenges. Again, like, kudos to the airline for trying to, figure out the best way to make it right and to avoid future situations. And, it's the challenge of making sure you're getting through to the actual person. And I mean, the person as a person, when you're dealing with someone in the system, that they're not just, sort of robotically following whatever the process is, that you're like, hey, come on, person to person here, how can we resolve this situation? I think there's actually a lot of willingness to do that, and that's really encouraging, because so much of society right now is just anger and social media and everything. Yeah, I think that we actually have here a real opportunity to try to try to make things better. And I really hope that we can do that.
Well, and honestly, it makes me feel better from this perspective. You have the background of working as an appointee, which, means obviously people have recognized that you have a strong knowledge base in what you're doing. You were at the Department of Transportation. You helped make changes. You helped make true changes. And what I love is that you're opening to listening, and now you have your own company that you've started to help with these issues, and you're willing to listen to me, to what I've gone through, what I hear from all these other autism families. And so as you get hired into by different companies to help them with issues and training and everything else, you obviously are willing to listen to us in the autism community to bring us, for the lack of a better description, a seat at the table through you. That means a lot to me. That really does. And I am sure that other autism families feel the same way, because if there's one thing that a lot of autism families will say to me over the years since I've been a blogger and an activist is they don't feel they have a seat at the table. They just don't feel like people are listening to them. I mean, I've gone to high-end hotels, talk to high-level executives, and they'll say, oh, we're putting together a special needs group. They put nobody at the table that represents autism. And I'm like, okay, you really didn't hear what I said. You brought one person with a disability that maybe have a complete different set of situations than us. And all we wanted was a seat at the table. We're not asking you to put us on your board. We're not asking. We just want somebody there that's willing to listen to us and take it. And that's why I said to you before we did this podcast, I said, please put your screen behind you with your company name, because I think what you're doing is, Skyline, remember everybody on there, Skyline. I want everybody to know that, because I do want businesses to reach out to you, because I do want to know that if there is let's just say an airline industry or a bus system or something that is looking for how can we actually become more disability friendly, they reach out to you. Guess what? You've now heard my voice, and you're taking that to that table. That can be all the difference between, say, an autistic adult having the right ability to get on that bus and go to a job, which can be a life changer for them, rather than just sit in their house every day and get depressed. Because if they have no way to get to a job, they just sit in their house and play video games all day. That's not good either. It's the whole picture of it. And that's why I think what you're doing is so important, and why I thought this podcast was so important. I mean, I told my husband I was super excited about this podcast because I like what you're doing, and I want to take these kind of concepts that maybe people aren't normally talking about in the autism community and bring it front and center to talk about. And that's why, I want you to share even a little bit more about what you're really doing with your business.
Well, thanks, Lynn. I guess one thing I should mention too, because we had, a number of projects that we worked on at the Department of Transportation. I should say that the career staff at the department, the folks that have been working there for years and are still working away, have really done a fabulous job. Really, really a great group of professionals. And we worked with a lot of folks from the folks in the policy office at DOT, where I work directly, to folks at different agencies, the agency that works on vehicle safety, the Federal Transit Administration, the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Railroad Administration, and then the Vehicle Safety Regulator is actually, they have a complicated acronym, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. And then there are a bunch of offices and agencies within the department that work on this, but really, fantastic professionals. And we had a really great team that helped pull together the events that I mentioned, and more than just the events, because the events are nice because they sort of announcements, discussions, speeches, really nice things, but really the specific projects that we were working on to promote innovation. We had an inclusive design challenge to find better ways to design cars. We had several different research projects to help get intelligent transportation that would be for the community. It was actually called ITS for us, but different projects that different folks worked on, at the department, and the people are still there, working away. All those career officials that I work with, and they do a fantastic job. What I'm doing now with Skyline is providing deep dive research and analysis on the 1,000-page documents that we see that emerge from the government from time to time. Both the regulatory agencies will put out some proposed rule, and it's 1,000-page long, and then we'll see Congress, as a congressional committee, will produce some legislative draft text that's 1,200 pages long, and it's really dense. It's really dense verbiage. So we at the firm are going to be folks that take those documents and then digest them in English, and at the same time, provide a political backdrop to understand, why are the politicians doing what they're doing, and what does that mean for the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. So we do try to be predictive there too, talking about policy risk and political risk, and understand what the future pathways are. And I think that's a real service that I think people can benefit from, to understand why it's happening and what is going to happen next.
I agree.
It's a thing that we think is going to be very valuable.
Oh, I completely agree, because sometimes the way, you and I both know this, because I was in politics for 25 years, so we would get phone calls when I worked for former elected officials, and people be screaming at us about something, and we'd be like, well, actually, that's not really the way it's going down. Okay, that was the media's interpretation of what is going down. And I think too often we don't know what's really happening. We think something else is happening, and it's kind of sad, because our voices should be used to really make good changes, but we get so busy chasing this carrot instead of really knowing what's going on. So if we can decipher it, I think, or we have somebody like you that deciphers it, it's a big difference. It really is a big difference, because like up on Capitol Hill, this, but not a lot of my listeners don't, is you have an LA and you have an LD. Okay, so they're looking through everything. They're digging through everything before they're writing it, and the congressman or congresswoman signing onto it, and and deciding to be a co-sponsor or whatever, and they're looking through everything. And I think so often we in the general public are not paying enough attention, or are just spoon-fed what the media wants us to know. And one of the things that I like about what you're doing is, I want to be able to, if you come out and put things out, and let's just say you say this particular bill is really going to work with self-driving cars, okay, and this is going to really be a thing on this or that, I want to be able to share that with my listeners too, what you're putting out, because I know you've really researched it, you've dug through it, you decided this is what's going on and this is how it's going, because I'm fascinated with that topic. I'm very fascinated with it, because I honestly see that as such a great thing for my son, okay, because it may mean the difference after I'm gone, of him being able to live in a home with, say, 4 other autistic adults, or other, like my other children, okay, and they can go to work during the day, and he can go to work during the day, because if he's got a vehicle that will basically do most of the driving, he can drive to his job. If he has no way to get to a job, and let's just say after I'm gone, because I'm 60, he's 21, after I'm gone, if he's living with one of my older 3 children, if they have to work, how do they stay home with him? He can't stay home 40 hours a week while they're at work. So I think some of these kind of topics are extremely important to explore. This can be the difference, a life changer, a game changer for a certain amount of autistic adults in the future. And I told you this when we talked off podcast. Our biggest fear is, as autistic parents, is who's going to take care of my child when I'm gone. And I think there are so many issues within the Department of Transportation that can fix that. If there's, buses that are super friendly to our kids being able to get back and forth to their work, or self-driving cars, and all these kind of transportation issues, that can be a game changer for us. And that's important to me. And that's why I kind of want to hear what policies are coming out, because again, I want to introduce to my following and my listeners a unique approach, not just the standard, okay, let's just talk about the same things. Let's just talk about, there's nothing wrong with the weighted blankets. Okay. Peyton has a weighted blanket. It was a game changer for us. He loves that weighted blanket. I love it. Okay. But I can find 50 people within 10 minutes that can talk to me about a weighted blanket. I can't find 50 people that know about the Department of Transportation and what is going on. And to me, they're equally important. So that's why I was super excited about this, because I thought we can now open the door between you and us in my group to kind of say, oh, wow. And you can shoot me over emails. I can have you on. We can talk about these issues. And that's why I just kind of see this as a ongoing relationship. And even though we don't have a direct seat at the table in the autism community, we have it through you because you're listening to us. And that means a lot to me. I mean, I worked for one particular elected official that would listen to people all the time. And to this day, I have the utmost respect for him, because we could go to him with everything. And sometimes he'd say, there's nothing we can do for that. But 90% of the time he'd say, go call so-and-so. They can help you fix that. That means a lot. And you were at a level that you were the kind of person that most of us sat in our house and said, boy, I wish I could just have 10 minutes talking to him and tell him where we're coming from. So that's why I'm excited to have you on here, and excited to know what you're doing and start this relationship, an ongoing relationship of what you see coming down the pike and what you see as valuable for us. Or if you see something that you think the autism community should either get behind or stand against because it may harm us, I'm all ears. I'm all up for helping you with this.
Well, thank you, Lynn, and you're too kind. I mean, it was a wonderful opportunity to be there at the department and to work on these issues generally. And I'm really excited about what's going to happen next, because this whole decade and really the next couple decades, but especially the next few years, we're going to be seeing these technologies that people are developing that are going to really help people, and it's going to save lives by making transportation safer, and it's going to make transportation easier, and so it's going to improve people's lives. And I think that we just need to all be talking and working and hearing each other out in order to figure out what the how we can get that done, and how we can get that done as soon as possible, because there's a lot of opportunity there, but we want to make sure that each different community and the different needs are all met. And I think folks should be paying attention. They should be paying attention to the development of driver assist type systems, because that's really what's going to be happening over the next few years. It'll be people, I mean, you've talked about people that are high functioning or sort of mid functioning, and across the spectrum. And to talk a little bit specifically about the technology on self-driving cars, the full what people call the level 5 autonomy of a car that you just hop into and then it takes you wherever you want to go. That may still be I mean, it's exciting, right? It's like the Jetsons, but still that's probably a little bit further away. I mean, that may be maybe 10 years, it may be who knows. But the stuff that's really happening right now and is available today and is, commercially on the market right now is what we call ADAS, these automated driver assist systems. And these are very important things like automatic emergency braking and lane keeper assist and parking assist and advanced cruise control systems. What the technology people call level 2 automation. And those types of technologies are really what's cutting edge right now, what's being included in cars that are on the road today. And so if you have someone who's maybe, who is maybe high functioning or mid functioning, wherever that sort of cutoff is, it just sort of, makes it possible for people that are driving themselves to be able to do so more safely. And that's for anyone who's driving. That's, people that are, non-autistic, autistic, what have you, for folks that are driving. And so that's the stuff that's really available right now. And I think the thing for folks to be paying close attention to is to make sure that these technologies are being included, but that we're also not suppressing innovation. And it's a tricky balancing act that the regulators need to do. I mean, government regulators are now looking at these technologies and saying, well, maybe we should mandate the technology. Well, what are we mandating exactly? They're going to need some time, years probably, to understand how specifically does the technology work, and what should we be mandating in terms of performance standards. And if you mandate those performance standards, do you step on innovation in other areas or different ways that you can have those systems work? But basically you have those specific targeted types of systems that help you perform a specific act of the driving operation. And so that's more weedy, in terms of understanding what's happening in transportation and car regulation. But it really is very important in terms of understanding how and when these technologies will be available for people on the roads. And then eventually, we may get to, fully autonomous, hop in the car and the car takes you where you want to go without a driver. I don't know. Sounds exciting, but
oh yeah, I think my kids would have rather I had one of those, because they used to tell me I was a horrible driver. But I think even just what we have now, the level 2 that you were talking about, I would even feel somewhat comfortable putting Peyton in a car like that, because I think the braking is my biggest stress for him, because I think if he knew that if it got to a serious level, that it would automatically brake. Okay, like you see those car commercials and stuff. I think he would be less stressed. I mean, because the one thing with Peyton is being high functioning is he can do so much more than he thinks he can do. Okay, but because he gets stressed. But if he knew that there's kind of that safety net of helping him park or helping him with the braking, he might, I don't know that I'd want him driving 20 miles up the road and sitting on, I-45 here in Houston, you know what I mean? But I mean, I think if he could just go 3 miles up the road and work at Walmart or something like that, I do think that's a possibility. I do think that's something that's, especially within the next 2, 3, 4 years as the technology grows. And I think these are the kind of things that within the autism community, we need to be really encouraging, because again, like I said, we have this long list of things that stress us out, worried about for our future, for our children. Well, if some of these things can start being checked off, it makes life a lot less stressful. And that's why I reiterate, and I keep going back to this, but the Department of Transportation, I think, is a lot more important in our discussions for the autism community than we realize, because like you said, the buses or the trains or even airplanes, if all of these have better training, more understanding of what we're doing, they think about, okay, we may have an autistic adult who, needs to get on and off a bus to go to a job. And if the bus driver is more aware of this, even just the training through these kind of programs, then all of a sudden it makes it easier for them to go to work because they may not always know to get off the bus at that particular time. You know, sometimes it comes down to human interaction, but sometimes, as much as we all don't like people dictating or putting all of these, you know, certain things in place, training can make all the difference in the world. I mean, I hear every single day people talking about how we need to have our police officers better trained for certain situations. Well, I agree with that. I agree with it as far as the autism community too, because if you go to touch my child, even though he's high functioning, if a police officer were to grab him, he would hit because he doesn't want to be grabbed. Okay. And that is his natural instinct to hit back. Okay. So I can't even imagine where that situation would go. Okay. Because they wouldn't necessarily know he's autistic. So I think this is the same thing in the Department of Transportation, that the more that we talk about it, the more training that we have, the more common sense approach to all of these things, and the more voice we have, the more we are helping our future. And I just think so many of these topics need to be discussed to get people, because, you know, it's the same old thing. You're watching a TV show and somebody starts talking about something and you start thinking about it in your head. Okay. And you start going, you know what? I never thought of that. And that's what I wanted to do with this podcast. I wanted people to start thinking about some of these topics and start thinking, wow, I never thought about that. I never thought about how the Department of Transportation can actually play a role in helping me down the line. Not
It-
even just for autism, but elderly.
yeah. And you know, Lynn, what you really touch on there is how really staggeringly important the Department of Transportation is as an economic regulator. It's just, you know, it's so important to the economy, and it's, you know, it's one of the, I'd probably fair to say, one of the more anonymous, you know, big federal cabinet agencies. But I mean, the department, it literally regulates everything that moves. I mean, everyone knows about highways, but I mean, you know, cars, trucks, airplanes, railroads, even pipelines. Pipelines are regulated by the Department of Transportation, because it's not just the movement of people, it's the movement of, you know, of goods. And so everything that's flowing through the pipe is being transported. And so pipelines, you know, they've got sub agencies that handle each different mode of transportation. In fact, inside the department, they're literally called the modes. We have our modes: the Federal Railroad Administration, the Federal Highway Administration. But they have a pipeline administration, that the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration. You know, it's supremely important, because you don't, everything you eat, everything you wear, everything that comes to your house, all the package delivery, whenever you go to the supermarket, everything was bought there by truck over the road, and typically through, you know, multiple modes of transportation. It is, I mean, it's just incredibly important, especially to modern life, where, you know, in the old days, maybe everything you ever, you know, ate or wore was something that was sort of, you know, grown or harvested or mined within a few miles of where you live. But
Right.
that's just not how the modern economy works. It's not how modern life works. Everything is being transported, you know, often from great distances, often from other countries. That means that just sort of that understanding how that network works, and or at least just having an awareness that there's a federal agency that's responsible for the safe and smooth and efficient operation, you know, through urban communities, rural communities, making sure that commerce moves. That is, it's staggeringly important, actually. But you know, most people don't know about it. But you know, it's important to make sure it's done right.
Oh, exactly. That's why I said, when you said you wanted to come on, or when we talked about it, and I said I was looking for guests, and you, oh yeah, and I was like, yes, because it, you know, coming out of politics, I understood how extremely important the Department of Transportation is. I think you're right. I think most people just think about the highways. They don't realize, like you said, the movement of goods. Okay, you have an autistic. I'll use this as an example. You have an autistic adult, and they live in a rural community, and they need to get certain supplies, medications, and things to them. Okay, these are all important types of things that need to be discussed. And I just don't think so many, I think we, especially in America, kind of have taken the attitude of, okay, everything's just going to go. And I think one thing COVID has really brought to an awareness of people is things don't just automatically go. You know, there are so many people behind whether or not that truck gets out the gate to get to your local grocery store that people never even think of. You know, you bring a ship in, like, okay, I was directly involved with the DP World port debacle, okay, years ago, okay? And I learned so much about when we bring a ship into the ports and, you know, whether they check what's in the barrels and the this and the that, okay? And letting it off and who manages the ports and what percentage are checked and what, you know, blah, 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 blah. And it really kind of opened my eyes to, my goodness, the Department of Transportation is busy. You know, you're right. It's kind of one of those that people don't pay that much attention to. You know, you have the Secretary of Transportation, people just go, oh, okay. You know, they don't realize everybody's paying attention to Homeland Security, but they're not paying attention to transportation. And yet I think it has so much more of a daily direct point of our life than we realize. And this is also why I said to you, I wanted to have you as a part of my Cup of Awesomism expert team that I can go to, because I do think these are issues that need to be brought up within the autism community. Because, okay, not to be selfish, I have 3 other children, and you know, everything in their life is important too to me. But with Peyton, he can't always go out there and fight for himself. So I fight for him. And I want a lot of these issues to make it smoother for him. And so many of these issues we need a voice in. And that's why I want to do these kind of podcasts. I want, you know, my whole focus of my podcast is how can we find solutions for the future for autism families that they may not even be thinking about they need the solution to. You know, I told you this story the other day. My dad, when I was a kid, and he always did this to me and it drove me crazy, but when I'd complain and I'd go complain to him about issues, and he'd, you know, just sit there and stare at me, and I'd get so mad, and I'd be like, why aren't you saying anything? And he'd be like, because you just want to complain. And I'd be like, no, I'm mad. And he's like, I know, but you didn't bring me any solutions. And I would stomp out of the room, slam the door to my room, you know, and I'd be mad. And then I'd come out with like 20 solutions. And he'd be like, okay, now we have a starting point. Let's start talking about how we can fix these problems. And, you know, and oh my gosh, it would make me so mad. But as an adult, and by the way, I did that to my
Your dad
kids.
sounds great, by the way.
Thanks. And I did that to my kids. Okay. And they, you know, I don't like this. I was like, yeah, I know. But I didn't tell them at the time. I know how you feel. But, you know, and this is what I want to do with my podcast. I want to find solutions that a lot of parents may not even realize they need the solution to. You know, they just know, oh my gosh, who's going to take care of my child, or how's my child going to be taken care of when I'm gone? And, you know, some of these issues are directly related to the Department of Transportation. So let's open up that field. Let's start talking about it. And I want to encourage my listeners, if you have questions or you have ideas or you have thoughts on this and you want, send them to me in an email, Lynne@awesomismmom.com. We'll bring them up with Loren. We'll talk about these things. I think it's important. I mean, I don't always know how to, you know, say how the parts of what are important, but I think it is extremely important. And it's not just about the cars, which, by the way, I was in a clubhouse room the other day, and one of the leading experts in England was in there. He is an expert on, and I always say it wrong, autonomous cars. And I talked to him a little bit about it, you know, the self-driving cars. And he's like, oh, he got all excited when I tied it to autism. He's like, oh, there's another great, he said, I never thought of that. So it was kind of cool to be able to, you know, even bring that up. But, you know, I think all of the Department of Transportation is important. To be honest with you, I think one of the most right now issues is flying and making sure that a lot of the airline industry is made more aware of what I call the silent or the unseen disabilities, like autism, and the busts, because they're where we probably would use the most and probably need the most to help of, hey, look, I don't want to add layers of regulation, but how awesome would it be if we can get more of them to actually do a lot more training of how to be more aware and helpful with autism? Because, if they miss their bus stop, like my son, if he misses his bus stop, if he's on a bus alone, say he's alone going to work, he may have a meltdown. That bus driver may not know how to deal with it. If we make them aware of how to deal with it, we've solved 50% of the problem right off the bat. So, I do think a lot of these topics need to be discussed. And that's why, I like I said, I'd like to have you, that's one of the things I really want to do is kind of have this team of experts that I can call on and say, hey, somebody came to me on this. What's your solution? And that's why when you said what you were doing the other day on that call that we were on, and you were saying what you were doing, I was like, oh, this guy. And then it was so funny because then I got on and said, I want guests on my podcast. And you go, hey, I'm interested. I was like, yay, because I was listening to you going, I need this guy on my podcast. So you want to know what's funny? I actually took a picture of you. I have a picture on my phone. I took a picture of you when you were giving it because I was going to look you up. How funny is that? Yeah, and then you popped in the chat.
I'm always excited to meet new people.
Yeah, I know, it was great. So, but again, thanks so much for coming on my podcast. And I promise you, whether you want to or not, you're going to be a guest again because I want to be able to keep this discussion going. And I do give you big salutes for having 8 children and starting a business. So, I think it's awesome. I mean, bless you.
I share the credit with my wife.
Yeah, I know. And I think that's awesome. And, if you're listening to my podcast and you are interested in connecting with him, I will have all the contact information attached to the podcast too. So we'll have it all on the YouTube, especially where you can connect with them. We always try to put connections in there so people can reach out to you. So I will have that on there. And I thank you so much, Loren, for coming on. This was a great discussion. You taught me a lot of stuff I didn't know. And we'll definitely see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Really
Thank you. You take care. Bye-bye.